I don't say this lightly. I actually feel like I was in the presence of evil in terms of actually watching this movie.
We are talking about Longlegs today. So, of course, I had to have my tall, lanky friend, Tim Grierson, join me because I'm 5 feet tall and I have short little legs. So, only Tim can describe this. Maybe Tim is the killer. Is it you?
My legs are pretty long. I thought it was because of my film expertise, but I am flattered that you thought of me when you thought of Longlegs and serial killer. So thank you for having me. I did not know. Okay, let's not get derailed, but I did not know you were 5 feet tall. I thought you were taller than
I
that.
am.
There
I
you
play
go.
taller.
That's right.
Thanks for being here because we're super interesting. So you got to hang out with us all summer long. The great Tim Grierson's filling in today for Alonso. Longlegs is one that you guys, I know you're so interested in. There's been a lot of buzz about it, so we were excited to come and tell you about it. Will you please describe this film to us, Tim?
I know you're not afraid of a little bit of dark. Because you are the dark.
Yes, so this is the new film from writer-director Osgood Perkins, and it is set in the 1990s in Oregon, and it stars Maika Monroe, who you might remember from It Follows. She plays a FBI agent named Lee, and she is investigating a serial killer who goes by the name of Longlegs and has been terrorizing the community for several decades. And during her investigation, what she discovers is that she knows who Longlegs is because, as we learned from a flashback, she actually met Longlegs when she was a little kid. Longlegs is played by Nicolas Cage. I think I want to stop there in terms of because one of the things, this is not a spoiler per se, but I think the less you know, the better going into the movie.
Sure.
The clues of how Longlegs does what he does, I think are really, I'll just put my cards on the table. I'm a big fan of this movie. I think it's excellent. And one of the things I really loved about the movie is how Osgood Perkins lays out the really sort of strange things, like what Longlegs' MO is really, really kind of fascinating in this movie. As far as I know, it's not based on any actual serial killer or inspired by any serial killers. This is a thing of Osgood Perkins' own creation, but it's really clever. And part of the fun of the movie is simply watching Lee, the FBI agent, try to figure out and decode exactly what's going on. So I have to say, there's a lot to talk about in this movie, but I saw this in a screening room, and this is a movie that I think you have to see in a theater if you can, because you want to be terrified with other people, and also because the sound design, not just the score, which I think is excellent, and also some great use of T-Rex in this movie, but also the sound design I think is really, really tremendous. I don't say this lightly. I actually feel like I was in the presence of evil in terms of actually watching this movie, because I feel like a lot of horror movies are scary, or they create a sense of dread, or whatever, all those cliches. But this movie actually feels actively evil, which I mean as a compliment, because you really get sucked into this world and the feeling of unease as Lee is sort of navigating this path, and we see the flashbacks and like that. So yeah, I was pretty high on it. Yeah,
Perkins does so much here with mood. And as you say, the sound design goes a long way toward achieving that. And the score, which is eerie. And I love the way it's shot. There's a whole section that takes place in a barn. And the lighting is really stark and ominous and beautiful in a terrifying way. And it took my breath away. And there are moments like that of great care, as far as it's dreary, but also kind of gorgeous. There's a darkness to the look of it, in the colors, in the shadows. And so much of that goes a long way to achieving her sense of isolation, right? She's a little socially awkward. Maika Monroe is amazing in this because she has to do so much in such an understated way to indicate a lot that's going on with her character, because sometimes she is fearful, sometimes she is determined, she is often socially awkward, which is played for a laugh here or there, which feels so good to laugh because, as you say, the mood it holds you in its grip. But the way that she is often shot in a hallway, at her desk working, at a library, just the way it's lighted, it really hammers home how alone she is even though she has colleagues in trying to investigate. And it indicates what she's been holding on to since childhood that we just don't know about her for a long time. And then contrast that with, we see the house she grew up in and how cluttered that is, and a certain kind of mental illness that indicates, which is unsettling as well. So in its sparseness and in its clutter, it does a lot to achieve a lot of psychological trauma here. So I thought this was great too. And I never knew where it was going, although it definitely has pieces of other movies. And this is not a spoiler because I've seen Perkins and Maika Monroe talk about this in like an Academy video on YouTube. They wear their influences on their sleeve. There's a lot of Clarice Starling in Agent Lee Harker.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the girl with the dragon tattoo, as far as her brilliance, but also her social awkwardness and doesn't know how to function in the world, although she is, accelerated in other capacities. So I dug this too. And we got to talk about Nicolas Cage.
Yes.
Can we talk about Nicolas Cage without spoiling things?
We absolutely can. By the way, there's also a lot of Seven. Speaking of David Fincher, there's a lot of
and
Seven.
Zodiac.
Yeah, and there is, and how you described how it looks, I think is dead on, because there is a drabness in the interiors of a lot of these scenes that make you think of like David Fincher's work, and it's drab but also gorgeous at the same time, and also kind of unsettling. Nicolas Cage, so he plays Longlegs, and another thing I really love about the movie. And if you've seen the trailers, you know this. The movie is not about who is the killer. This is not what the movie is. The movie is, we know it's this guy, but we just have to figure out exactly how we can prove that he is doing the things that he is doing. And like I said, I won't spoil this, but actually what's going on is really, really interesting. And I can't really think of any other movie that does it quite this way. Nicolas Cage is somebody who, if you're a professional film critic, you see him a lot in movies. And I am neither you see, everything that Nicolas Cage does is brilliant because he is acting on a different level than other human beings. I'm not in that camp, but I'm also not in the camp of Nicolas Cage does too many movies and he's self-parody at this point. I'm kind of in the middle of the two. And this performance I really loved because often he will be over the top. And that can be really fun. But this performance actually doesn't feel like it's big in a certain way, but it's also really kind of small in another way. It feels really like hemmed in. And when I wrote about this movie, when I reviewed it for Screen International, I said, like, there's an ugliness to the character. There's a lack of showiness about the character that I was really impressed by, because I think we might assume that Nicolas Cage will go big, and there are moments where he does go big, but those are in contrast to how he is throughout most of the rest of the film. I hate comparing it to the performances that people have done, like Heath Ledger of the Joker, but there is a Joker element, but it doesn't feel like that either. And this felt, your description of the character Lee, I thought was perfect, Christy, because that is who she is. There is a haunted, withdrawn quality to her. She never feels like she's entirely present in any scene, because it's almost as if her past is still right there in front of her and it's still bothering her. But she's very good at her job. And so she's much more like intellectual and withdrawn. And he is like this coiled chaos and like weird fury. And that's a really great compliment in terms of those two performances. They work really well together. It's the most probably Silence of the Lambs element, I would say, of the movie, is how they bounce off of each other. And so both performances are great. Neither takes away from the other. And I think Cage is actually very generous in terms of not going so over the top and doing a performance that actually feels scary in the way that I find actual people scary, because they're not big, that they're more like, there's something about them where you feel like they're going to snap at any second, and they almost feel like there's something not like unwell about them, but they're like so quiet and so calm and friendly that you get unnerved, and that's what Cage does in this. I think it's a really remarkable performance from him.
Yeah, it's showy in understated ways, which sounds like a contradiction, right? And there's a volatility to him, as you say, an unpredictability to him, a volatility to him. I see what you mean in the Joker comparison, because he is toying with her, and he toys with people. He toys with people we see along the way in flashbacks, and it's evil, and terrifying. And so, and also I think under that makeup, he's unrecognizable. And that's part of what's scary about it, is because we know what Nicolas Cage looks like, and haha, he's everywhere. He does these batshit crazy roles, but there's something about the makeup that is unnerving, that makes his performance like on a different level. So anyway, I dug it too. We don't want to go into spoilers. We'll just tell you, please go see Longlegs. What's your number for this movie?
I gave it an 8.5.
Okay. I'm there with you. I'll say like 8.2. There is a bit of exposition toward the end. There's a bit of explaining. There's a monologue that I feel explains too much. And I think we can see that without being told it. So that's my one little caveat there. But otherwise, it's so well done. Elevated horror, people. Go check it out.